Mr. President, I am grateful for this opportunity to brief the Security Council as it takes up the latest report of the Secretary General on the verification mission in Colombia. As always, I am honored to be joined by Minister of Foreign Affairs, Álvaro Leiva, and once again, I thank him and the government of Colombia for their continued trust in the work of the mission in support of peace. I also welcome today the participation of Rodrigo Botero in this meeting, which he's a leading Colombian environmentalist and participant in current peace efforts. His work does illustrate the important connections between conflict, peace building, and the environment. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, we meet amid approaching milestones in the peace process, ahead of the 7th anniversary of the signing of the final peace agreement, and as the halfway point nears in the 15-year timetable for its implementation. Those who have deeply studied Colombian armed conflict point to skewed land distribution and the failure to enact needed rural reforms as one of its root causes. It is for this very reason that the parties to the agreement place comprehensive rural reform at its heart, making it the first chapter in the accord and the area requiring the most substantial long-term investments. It is not surprising, therefore, that lagging progress in this area in the initial years of implementation has limited the extent to which the agreement has been able to bring the expected transformations to long marginalized rural and conflict-affected areas. Nevertheless, while a great distance still remains to attain the ambitious goals of the agreement in this respect, I wanted to begin my briefing today with an acknowledgement of the increasing governmental efforts underway to bring about these reforms. I would say that a commitment to this particular section of the agreement, in addition to the new peace dialogue initiatives, were the outstanding features of the recently concluded first year of the Petro administration as it sought to further consolidate peace in the country. Important policy actions in this regard are highlighted in the Secretary General's latest report, which recalls a year marked by substantial budget allocations for rural reform and its prioritization in the National Development Plan, increased dialogue with peasants and landholder organizations, and recent steps such as the establishment of the National Agrarian Reform System and the designation of 4 priority regions for comprehensive interventions in rural development. The commitment is brought to life in human terms in scenes such as the witness this past weekend in the town of San Juan de Arama, in the southern department of Meta, where land purchased by the government was delivered to some 500 beneficiaries, among them former FARC-EP combatants, peasants, and indigenous members of the communities where they have resettled. Hopeful moments such as these are an increasingly common occurrence today, as Colombia's government takes up with greater dynamism this crucial overdue aspect of the peace agreement. The most recent report of the Secretary General also contains multiple examples that illustrate the interdependence between the implementation of the 2016 final peace agreement and other efforts by the government of President Petro to consolidate peace. A few weeks ago, I visited former territorial area for training and reintegration of Carrizal in Antioquia department, where more than 50 former FARC-EP members and their families live alongside members of the local community. There, as in similar locations around the countryside, one can see the admirable persistence of former combatants and communities joining efforts to improve their lives and realize the transformations foreseen in the final peace agreement. In a project supported by the mission women former combatants who work in artisanal mines have augmented their incomes and that of the community by crafting and selling jewelry. Former combatants and community members have also joined forces in planting trees to counter deforestation. However, as I also heard in my conversations with ex-combatants and leaders of social organizations, these initiatives have been imperiled because of threats from illegal armed groups. In fact, this reintegration area is, like several others before it, likely to be relocated in the near future owing to insecurity. As the relocation is planned, I reiterate my call on authorities to ensure dignified living conditions in the new location and to continue to look after the safety and well-being of communities who remain behind. Allow me also to condemn once more, and in the strongest terms possible, the killings of former FARC-EP combatants. 2 since the report was issued. Nearly 400 former combatants have been killed since the signing of the peace agreement. This is simply unacceptable and calls for urgent and concrete measures from the authorities for their protection as well as that of social leaders and human rights defenders. Mr. President, an important step in that direction is the recent adoption by the National Commission on Security Guarantees of the long overdue public policy to dismantle illegal armed groups and criminal organizations. This policy, a product of consultations between the government and civil society, seeks to address the multiple causes favoring the creation and strengthening of criminal actors. Its implementation should help authorities to respond effectively to the ever-evolving threats in the territories. Señor Presidente, distinguidos miembros del Consejo. Las múltiples expresiones de violencia que persisten en varias regiones de Colombia no deben seguir obstaculizando la implementación. Las iniciativas de diálogo impulsadas por el Gobierno con actores armados son, sin duda alguna, un necesario esfuerzo adicional para desactivar estas amenazas y revertir sus impactos sobre las comunidades al permitir que se materialicen los compromisos pendientes del acuerdo de paz. Esto es particularmente cierto para territorios indígenas y afrocolombianos, en regiones como el Pacífico, en donde las acciones de grupos armados y la implementación limitada del capítulo étnico del acuerdo mantienen a las comunidades bajo niveles intolerables de violencia y de falta de oportunidades. Señor Presidente, quiero saludar nuevamente los avances de la mesa de negociación entre el Gobierno de Colombia y el Ejército de Liberación Nacional, ELN. En particular, quisiera resaltar el desarrollo del cese al fuego bilateral, que ha resultado en una disminución del conflicto entre las partes. Destaco también la importancia del apoyo del Consejo al permitir que la misión contribuya a este proceso a través de su participación en el mecanismo de monitoreo y verificación. Este mecanismo está contribuyendo a la prevención y la resolución de incidentes entre las partes. Me complace también informar que gracias a los países contribuyentes llegaron recientemente 31 de los 68 observadores internacionales autorizados por este Consejo y desplegados específicamente para el monitoreo y verificación del cese. También avanza el trabajo del Comité Nacional de Participación instalado en agosto para impulsar la participación de todos los sectores de la sociedad colombiana en el proceso de paz con el ELN. Muestra de la manera en que el proceso se asienta cada vez más en Colombia. Ayer, por primera vez, la mesa de diálogo sesionó en Bogotá. Señor Presidente, vemos positivamente los diálogos entre el Gobierno y el grupo que se autodenomina Estado Mayor Central, FARC-EP. Las partes anunciaron el pasado fin de semana una suspensión de acciones ofensivas entre sí y su intención de establecer una mesa de diálogos de paz junto con la entrada en vigor de un cese al fuego bilateral a partir del 16 de octubre. He sido informado que próximamente las partes solicitarán a este Consejo que la misión pueda ser autorizada para participar en el monitoreo y la verificación del cese al fuego. Me aseguraré de que este Consejo reciba toda la información necesaria para considerar esta solicitud. Las expectativas que genera el avance hacia la construcción de un proceso de paz deben ser claramente correspondidas con el cumplimiento de los compromisos adquiridos, con el desescalamiento de las confrontaciones y, especialmente, con el respeto de los derechos de comunidades, líderes sociales y firmantes del Acuerdo de 2016. La demostración constante de la voluntad de las partes pasa necesariamente por evitar que se repitan hechos como los ataques del mes pasado en el departamento del Cauca, que resultaron en la trágica muerte de civiles de comunidades que hace décadas buscan la paz. Presidente, distinguidos miembros, al encontrarnos en el mes de octubre, que se celebra el aniversario de la resolución 1325 sobre mujer, paz y seguridad, saludo al Gobierno de Colombia y a las organizaciones de la sociedad civil por sus avances hacia la finalización del primer Plan de Acción Nacional para su implementación. En este mismo contexto, es otro hito fundamental la reciente decisión de la Jurisdicción Especial para la Paz de abrir el caso 11, que abordará la violencia basada en género, sexual y reproductiva ejercida por las partes en conflicto. Reconozco el liderazgo y el incansable trabajo de cientos de organizaciones de la sociedad civil a lo largo y ancho de Colombia que abogaron por la apertura de este caso. Este importante desarrollo se suma a otros avances recientes por parte de la JEP en su camino hacia la emisión de las primeras sanciones propias, incluidos recientes reconocimientos de responsabilidad hechos por todas las partes. La contribución a la verdad y el reconocimiento de responsabilidad por los crímenes cometidos son, además de una obligación de todas las partes en el conflicto, pilares fundamentales para el éxito de este proceso. Tal y como lo expresó el Secretario General en su informe, es importante para el proceso de paz en su conjunto alcanzar con prontitud la fase en que la JEP dicte sus primeras sanciones propias. Del mismo modo, que el Gobierno garantice que existan las condiciones para la pronta y efectiva implementación de estas sanciones será definitivo para que éstas puedan cumplir su objetivo y honrar así el principio de la centralidad de las víctimas. Con este propósito, la misión continúa trabajando de cerca con la JEP, comparecientes y entidades del Gobierno y del Estado. Mr. President, members of the Council, from conducting a participatory process to develop the National Action Plan for Security Council Resolution 1325, alongside women platforms, to consultations with peasants and landowners over rural reform, dialogue with grassroots organizations has been a prevalent practice of the current administration. I salute this inclusive approach, which provides opportunities for building consensus on public policy. In that spirit, I encourage the government, former FARC-EP combatants, and all actors invested in the comprehensive implementation of the final peace agreement to prioritize constructive dialogue. This will be essential for sustained progress in areas such as the ethnic chapter, the rural reform, reintegration, as well as illicit crop substitution. Also critical to moving forward is the definition without further delay of a clear institutional architecture to oversee implementation, including the appointment of the high-level official within the presidency tasked to lead these efforts. The period ahead will be key for translating new plans and initiatives into actions. Mr. President and distinguished members, in over 2 weeks, Colombia will hold its second local elections since the final agreement. Unfortunately, violence has already impacted the electoral campaign in various regions and has affected parties across the political spectrum, including former combatants and members of Communist Party. I trust that authorities will do their utmost to guarantee that both candidates and voters can participate in the elections in the most inclusive and secure way possible throughout the national territory. This would deepen a tangible outcome of the final agreement. Mr. President, Colombia's conflict was once considered intractable. The peace-building efforts underway today, with the crucial support of this Council, came about following frustrated attempts in previous decades. But Colombians never gave up on peace, and nor did the international community. In times of tensions around the world, Colombia's case is a clear reminder that even the most entrenched of conflicts can be resolved through dialogue and a call to never desist in the search for peace. I thank you.